Okay, yes, 7. Welcome again to the at-home practical room. And for this experiment, we're going to investigate osmosis. And osmosis is a really important science principle that you're going to have to learn about. And later on in your school life, this will be a required practical, but it's extremely important you start getting your head around the idea today. And for the experiment, you're going to need to have a potato. Now ask your parents about this in case potatoes are in short supply in your house. A blunt knife is fine. It doesn't have to be anything super sharp, and at your age you're quite capable of doing this without cutting your fingers off. I've got a couple of bowls, so I'm going to need those. I've got some water and some ordinary table salt. Now again, I do expect you to ask your parents for permission. In fact, if they're at home with you, I would expect you to involve them in this. They could be your helper. At this point, you ought to stop the video and you should write down investigating osmosis, and it's the movement of particles in and out of cells. And this rough and ready table, we have potato chip. The length before, now I've said to you many times, this does have to have units, and I've not left enough room underneath. I'll put mine on top. It's going to be millimetres. We're going to have pure water and salt water, and there are extensions to this. I'll explain as we go along. And so to set the experiment up, I assume now you've done all your table. Welcome back. Take your potato, and what you want to get out of this is a reasonably good set of chips. You can always use what you don't use for this and cook at home, but you do need to cut the skin off them. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm cutting fairly regular chips, and I'm cutting 2 today. You ought to cut more. You ought to do more than 1 chip. I'm only going to do this with 1 chip, but I would like you to do this with more than 1 chip, and make sure the chips fit into there, because you can see mine are a little bit too big, so I'm going to cut the tops off mine. I want them to be pretty much the same size, so if you cut them together, that's quite effective. Now I can move my bits and pieces away, but I say again, I don't want any skin on these. And the very first thing you do is that you will need to then take a ruler and measure the chips. And if I take my ruler here, and now I can't get my head down too close, and I'm doing it from the wrong angle. I think that is 5 centimetres. That's 50 millimetres. So that chip, I'll put it in the white bowl, I think is 50. And so I get my pen, and it's got to go in pure water, so that's 50. And notice, because I've put the unit at the top, I don't need to keep writing it down. And then my second chip, let's measure that one. And they don't need to be the same length. What I do need to do is measure them very accurately, and that one is 55 millimetres. And you can see there how I'm doing this. You could argue that's 56. You could argue it as much as you like. Try to make them square potatoes. Don't have any funny edges to them. And again, down here, that's going to go in my salt water, and that's 55. And that's going to be this bowl here. And of course, you can always help yourself so you don't get confused this by taking a pen, a lot of the sort I'm using, and just making a note. That's going to be my salt water one, and this is going to be my pure water one. And put, as we do in class, just so you don't get them confused. And then finally, I'm going to put one in salt water. So how much salt am I going to put on it? Well, because you're doing this at home and you can't weigh this out very easily, I'm going to measure out a level teaspoon of water. Salt, sorry. And just make sure that that's quite level. And I know some just dropped in. Put that in. That's my salt one. The other one stays exactly as it is. I'm then going to fill each one up. Now, how much water should they have in them? Well, today it's not that important. It will be eventually. And I'll put that one like so. So they're treated exactly the same way. Pretty much the same sort of containers. They're set up, they're in place. My pure water one was 50. My salt water one was my 55. And they just sit in that now. And how long do they sit there? I leave them for a day. Now, if you're doing this as an experiment at home, one chip doesn't really cut it, and as good scientists I would expect you to maybe have a bigger container. Maybe you've got a cereal bowl or something, and you make you maybe use 2 teaspoons of salt for the salt one, and you therefore have so I could have 3 chips in that bowl and 3 chips in that bowl, and I could take the average. But for the purpose of just showing you how to set this up, that is what I want you to do first. And tomorrow I will take these and I will measure them again and do the maximum length afterwards. And what I'm looking here to see is, has that length changed? And the only variable in the experiment was the salt. Thank you very much.